Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the program tonight. Thank you all for coming and joining. Let's get real program. Tonight's share 123. Should really be share 124, but due to Usher Parnas, there was no share last week. I apologize. Hopefully, Menachem should be a share every Sunday. Again, we started first shkoyach to everybody for coming. The platform is growing. Menachem, it's already 2.5 years, share 123. We say thank you for all the people that are coming every week, posting it, letting people know about it on WhatsApp, emailing it to family and friends. And I really appreciate it. It's Sichas Chaverim to grow together. So let's keep it going. And if anybody wants to join the WhatsApp to get the flyers every week, you can send me a WhatsApp at 848-525-0066, or you could go to menachembernfeld.com. You could sign up for his emails. He sends out the weekly flyers of the speakers to send in your questions, together with the replays on Shem that will be uploaded later tonight, the replay of this year. If anybody is watching, you can click on the like button or the subscribe button for Coach Menachem. And every time the new share comes up, you get notified. You get to watch every single share. So please join it. A special thank you to all the advertising sponsors: the Lakewood Scoop, Ellie Ariel from 5 Central, and Chayla Kaufman and Shul Summer from JCN, the Jewish Content Network, for always promoting us on all the Jewish digital platforms. If anybody's here for the first time, every Sunday night at 9:30 on this Zoom ID, we have tremendous rabbanim, therapists, tremendous topics. So if you're here for the first time, welcome, and please join us every week if you could. Next week, we're going to have a share December 4th. The program is going to be with the world famous Meshulam Epstein, one of the biggest therapists actually that specializes in OCD and anxiety. He's from Scranton, and in the therapy world, he's very, very well known. So please join us. It should be an interesting topic, talking about anxiety or piety, understanding the OCD and anxieties in the frum worlds. He wants to really keen in on that and really discuss it. And he's the mumcha in that area, so it should be very powerful. Please, if it's Negeya, definitely listen and please join. Tonight we have the schus and the honor of having the world famous Yeshiva, thousands of Talmidim. It's Chaim Zvi Center from Eretz Yisrael with us. Giving us a lot of chizuk and hadracha, and let's try to get out of him whatever we could tonight and really get to the core of it. Tonight's share is 123. The president of Let's Get Real, Arno Yachfried, came up with the gematria tonight. The Hava ve'emuna is 123. Menachem, with Chinuch, we should always achieve it with Ahava, with love, emunah, and believing what you're doing is right, and believing in the children. So that's the gematria tonight. Menachem, it should come out perfect gematria. Let's start off first with the opening tonight with our host, Coach Menachem Bernfeld. Coach Menachem, what are we doing here tonight?
Shkoyach. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shir with Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem. And Baruch Hashem, tonight we have the supposed to have with us Rabbi Center. Before we go tonight, I did get a lot of emails trying to figure out what they're going to do for last week when we didn't have a show. But I hope you got a chance to catch up those that you missed. And we're happy to see you back. And here we are to continue. So we've had many episodes on Chinuch and different way of looking at it. And that's really what we're going to discuss tonight. It's more like how to apply. A lot of concepts we discussed, heard from different listeners, different speakers, different ways, how. But for those who are in the world of Chinuch, for those who deal or you're with your own kids, you know that when you're actually facing a challenge, it's not always so easy to apply and take all the things that you learned. So it does need chazara, it does need more information to understand each child is different. So especially tonight, which we have supposed to have Rabbi Center, which he deals with this day in, day out. But if you can imagine in school, for example, a classroom of 28 or maybe 38, very hard for the teacher, for the Rebbe to connect. And even the kids at home, talking about a child, one of 6, for example, to understand each child. The only way you can be there to have the influence to be able to connect is if you understand each child. But you have your way, we have all the things the way we grew up, the parents themselves. Many times there's shalom bias issues. One thinks we should do it this way, the other way. Each child is different. And to be able to connect, to be able to go into the child's shoe, to really understand. But really, it takes it to the next level. It's not enough that we understand the child. It's not enough that the teacher could say, I understand the kids in the class. The next level is that the child should feel understood. That's a hard one. The child should be able to say, this Rebbe understands me. My mother understands me. My father understands me. That's the next level. And that's what we're looking for. Hopefully, with all the shiurim and all the things that we're learning, and with the experience, with the challenges that we have, usually our kids push us to the wall, and we have to figure it out. We can't just do what we did with the other child. Every kid is different. And we start learning to understand that even though we think A, but they think B, to understand how they think. So we can slowly go down to their level to understand, talk to them, and then slowly, hopefully, feel that they should feel that they have somebody that understands them, so that we should have the influence, the hashpah that we want, that they should grow up healthy in ruchnius and gashmius. So thank you very much, Rabbi Center, for being with us tonight. And hopefully we'll be able to go into how to apply. What can we do different when they're young, and now when they're older, and how to hold their hands while they're going through challenges or whatever it is, to be there for them. So shkoyach, Gushav Laros Yata Deshmaya.
Beautiful opening. Because let's get into it. Again, tonight's share's topic is Chinuch with passion, getting your kids to do what they want. What kids to do what they want, that they don't want to do, so they can achieve what they want to achieve. Tonight's share is sponsored by Eli and Chani Eisman of EE Events with a Kursa Tov to Rosh Hashiva. The dedication and devotion he gives each Talmud may continue to be Marb's Torah with Yishuv Das. I'm going to read Rabbi Center's bio, and then Rabbi Center, the floor is yours. Rabbi Center's bio. Growing up in a rabbinic family, Rabbi Chaim Zvi Center, absorbing strong Torah values and a sense of achrayus for the klal. After learning in Yeshivas Mir Yerushalayim for 5 years, Rabbi Center started delivering shiurim to Talmidim in the Mir. 5 years later, in the summer of 2006, with the guidance of his Rebbe, Rabbi David Cohen Shlita, Rosh Yeshivas Chevron, he opened his own yeshiva with just 20 boys. Today, his enrollment stands at 110 students, 90 married Koil students, and over 20 Rebbeim. Rabbi Center was influenced by his grandfather, Rabbi Dov Rosenbaum, an activist and the driving force behind the Rosenbaum Yeshiva of North Jersey. He's also greatly influenced by his teachers, Rabbi Shlomo Freifeld, Rabbi Kalman Shapiro, my son's name. Okay, brilliant educators of years past. He lives in Arzei Arbira neighborhood of Yerushalayim with his wife and children. Rabbi Chaim Zvi Center, it's chus to have you. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, even though it's 4:30 in the morning, but I'm still so happy and very alert because I'm excited. The gematria of today's shir was Ba'ahava Ve'emunah. So I think that it's extremely important to realize that the foundation of all chinuch has to be ahava. It needs to be that and that has to come through that whether it's a child or whether it's a talmid has to realize that his rebbe is there, his parent is there because they love him, and the way that they're treating them, what they're doing with them, is coming from love. That has to be the foundation of everything. It has to be ahava. And they have to build trust that the child or the Talmud trusts his parent and his Rebbe. And that the Piaseczner writes about very much how important it is that a Talmud should feel like he can trust his Rebbe, that his Rebbe knows best. And one of the things that I'd like to say, we're talking about all these different types of drachim and chinuch, is the golden rule of chinuch. In my opinion, the golden rule of chinuch, I would say this is the golden rule, is that there are no rules. The golden rule in chinuch is you have to know every child is going to be different. And if you have one derech and one path in chinuch, so then if you have tremendous mazel, all your children will work in that derech. But very often, one child needs something, a different child needs something else. So we can't stick to just one way. And I've noticed that of all the episodes that there's been here with Coach Menachem, there have been many different drachim, and it's super important that people should be exposed to all of them, because what's good for one child will not necessarily be good for the other child. And I was just talking to a parent today, and they were saying to me how this is our derech in chinuch. And when someone asks me, what's your derech in chinuch, or what's your goal for your talmidim, I tell them, Every Talmud is different. So therefore your goals are going to be different, and your derech is going to be different. With one Talmud, maybe you're going to go very soft. With another Talmud, you're going to have more expectations of them or be more firm. So for that reason, if a person really wants to know how to do chinuch, he's got to listen to all of the episodes of Coach Menachem. They're all available online. I'm sure you could get them. And then you can hear all the different things that a person can perhaps utilize, the different resources. And it changes in different ages and different stages of a person's life also. The way that you treat a child at a young age is not necessarily the way you're going to treat him when he's older, or if a child is struggling at one point in his life, when that struggle is over, so then you can now adjust and you could change the way that a person is dealing with his talmidim, with his children. So one of the things I'd like to speak about is one of the drachim in Chinuch. It's a pasuk in Koheles, Smach bachur b'yaldusecha. The pasuk says over there that a bachur should enjoy being young, and he should just enjoy, go however you want to go. Vida ki al kol eila yavicha Elokim b'mishpat. And realize that all of that you're going to be accountable for. So the way the Gemara says this is that it sounds like the pasuk is starting with, have a good time, and then the pasuk says you should just know you're going to be accountable for everything. Says the Gemara, Ad kan is divrei yetzer hara. Mikan ve'elech is divrei yetzer tov. So the yetzer hara is telling you have a good time, enjoy yourself, you can party, and then the yetzer tov is telling you got to be careful. But Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and the Or Yisrael says that what the Gemara means, what Chazal mean when they say that is that a person has to, when he's young, utilize the Yetzer Hara. He has to harness the Yetzer Hara. Smach bachur b'yaldusecha. Make it gishmak when he's young. Make it fun. Make it exciting. Make it have a good time. And by doing that, he can bring a person to Avodas Hashem. When he's older, then you have to talk to a person with his Yetzer Tov. The dark mishpat means that when a person is more mature, then there's a different approach. But there's a way of getting a person out of his comfort zone, even by using the Yetzer Tov. And that's by, for example, a person using incentives. Incentives are something that work. What it is that giving a person a carrot, you're giving them something but you're getting them to get out of their comfort zone. And I think that this is an extremely important yesod in Chinuch. The Baal HaTanya writes that to be an Eved Hashem, you have to be out of your comfort zone. You have to be struggling. There needs to be a struggle. So there's many different ways to get a person to struggle. One way is to try to give them a positive incentive. And that's what it says over here in the beginning of the pasuk of Koheles. But there's another way, and that way is to have an expectation of a Talmud. And when you expect something from a Talmud, even though it's something that's difficult, but you can encourage him out of his comfort zone. And the Gemara says the following thing. It says the Gemara, Ein lecha kol esev ve'esev. Sorry, the Medrash. Medrash says, there isn't a blade of grass in the world. She'ein lo malach. Oymed alav, it's different. Yours is malach or mazel, but it's really the same thing. There isn't a blade of grass that doesn't have a malach that's standing over it. We don't have to take that literally here, that's hitting it, but it means there isn't a blade of grass that, if you wanted something to grow, anything has to grow, it needs to be taken out of its comfort zone. You need to take it out of its comfort zone. You need to stretch it. And that's the job of a Rebbe. The job of a Rebbe under normal circumstances is to create new expectations from his Talmud. I was by the Sudas Preda of a friend of mine, Rabbi Stern, and he wanted to thank his Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Elephant. He said, I want to thank you, Rebbe, for not tolerating your Talmidim to be Amaratzim. It wasn't tolerable. And when a Rebbe doesn't tolerate that, so then the Talmud rises up to the occasion that someone could say, what do you mean? You have to be tolerable, you have to be understanding, you have to be accepting. But if a Talmud knows that a Rebbe loves him, and the Rebbe loves him, and because he loves him, he says, you can't stay in Amaretz. So then the Talmud feels pushed out of his comfort zone to become what we can become. And again, There's no rules, because there are some people that, because of what they've been through in their life, they can't deal with that. It's too traumatic for them. And it's true. There are some people that they're wounded, but there's a derech and chinuch, which is the norm. And the norm is that a Rebbe can expect from his Talmud. We had the great schus in our yeshiva to have Rabbi Chaim Wallerstein come to speak. And Zachariah Wallerstein, when he spoke, he says, "What do you want me to do? You want me to hammer them? You want me to hammer them? Like to hammer the Talmidim?" I said, "Rabbi Wallerstein, they could take it." He said, "I can't give it. Because before you hammer them, you have to hug them. You hug them and hammer them. And I haven't hugged them yet because I don't know them." But he's saying a tremendous yesod. About the foundation has to be, you have to hug your Talmidim. And they have to feel the love. But after that, you can hammer them. You can say, I want more from you. I expect more from you. And the greatest mechanchim that had so much love for their Talmidim, but they had expectations. I remember when I was a bacher in Pesach Yeshiva, and I had finished the shir, whatever it was during Chazor's the shir, and I made the colossal mistake of going down to the laundry room to take my clothing out of the laundry during Seder. And the Rosh Yeshiva came into the laundry room, was during Chazor's Ashir, and in walks the Rosh Yeshiva Meister. And he looked at me with such a look of disappointment. All the blood drained from my face. I felt like I wanted to bury myself at that moment. And he shrugged his shoulders at me like, "What are you doing?" Now, someone can say that must have been so like painful, and it was such a building moment for me, because I knew that the Rosh Yeshiva expected more of me because he respected my koiches and what I was and who I could be. And if a Rebbe can convey that to his Talmud, or a parent can convey that to a child, if they're matzliach to do that, so then they can get more out of their Talmudim. There's two amazing midrashim. With this, I'm going to close in this week's Parsha. One medrash, the medrash says, in Shemais Rabbah, that how is it that Yitzchak had a son that's Yotzel L'Tar B'Sra? Says the medrash, because Yitzchak was too soft on Esav. He didn't put down boundaries for Esav. Apeladik medrash. And he says, if a parent, now again, we're dealing with if someone is a healthy child, and every child, a person has to know how to deal with that child. But if a person has children that are healthy, he should set boundaries for his children. And if he doesn't, says the medrash, the child eventually says on Esav was just waiting for his father to die. Here is his father, it's giving him everything, he's being permissive. He had a soft spot for Esav, and Esav was just waiting for him to die. Because a child appreciates when a parent sets boundaries. And because Esav didn't have enough boundaries, that's why it happened. Now, of course, we can't be critical of Yitzchak, but we can understand the message that the Medrash is telling us, is that boundaries are important. And a person wants to get more out of his child. So a child needs boundaries, because we all need boundaries. And if a person's going to be left to just do whatever he wants, he's not going to accomplish what he himself wants to accomplish. And we can help them by setting boundaries for them. The same way we need a person who wants to excel in sports needs to have a coach. A person that wants to lose weight needs to have someone who's going to help them with that. A person who wants to accomplish things, it's no different. It's the same. And I want to end with one last medrash. Avraham Avinu sent Yishmael out of the house. That's some people would say that that's extreme. Of course, it's not extreme in Yaakov in Avraham Avinu's case, but Yishmael did tshuva. How is it that Yishmael did tshuva? The Medrash says it's for an oitzer place hatayra hafla v'fela pikad Rabbi Lazar. It says that Avraham Avinu used to go visit Yishmael. he would go visit him. He would go to his house, and he went multiple times. And he spoke to him about his family, even after he sent his son away. And the Medrash ends. It says the Medrash, "V'yoda Yishmael shad achshav rachamei aviv alav." And Yishmael knew that until now his father had rachmanas on him. What does that mean? His father sent him out of the house. It was with rachmanas. Everything was done with rachmanas. So a person can convey, even when he's being firm, extremely, even when a person is sending a child out of the house. And again, every situation is very different. And I'm not suggesting what anyone should do under their situations. We could try to talk about it if we can. But every situation is different. But if there's a situation where someone's being sent out of the house, and to realize that it's being done be'ahava, that child can come back.
Beautiful, Rabbi Center. Okay, we have a lot of questions. We're going to cover a lot tonight. Make sure whatever we can cover. Everybody's encouraged to ask anything live. It's an open forum. We'll start off with a poll, and let's see what the Olam answers, and then we'll get into it. Okay, Rabbi Center?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I got it up. Okay, it's a 3-question poll. Here we go. Hold on one second. First question. Do you think a person should set boundaries with their teenage children or just be open-minded and supportive? 4 answers. There must be boundaries, otherwise will be chaos. Option 1. Option 2. Unconditional love and giving the children freedom is the only way in today's generation. Option 3. There's a balance of boundaries at the same time giving our children freedom to choose as well. Option 4. Honestly, I am so confused. I don't know myself anymore. I choose 4. Okay. After all the Coach Menachems, I don't know myself. Okay. Number 2. Where are you holding with your Chinuch as of today? Three options. Seem to have everything under control. Baruch Hashem, everybody's doing great. Just came here to show Rabbi Center that you're supportive of the share, but you just came to say hello. Option 2, my children are out of control and basically they're running the show. Option 3, we're doing the best job possible, but sometimes I feel like we're losing the battle. Third question. How do you feel the yeshiva system is today with our children? So opinion, option A, too restrictive. Option B, too permissive. Option C, I think they have a great balance. I trust them with our children's chinuch. Everybody answer those questions, and then we will share the results, and then we will get into it. And again, anybody wants to ask a lot of questions, Zoichet to have Rabbi Sente here. Sente, I got so many calls from Talmidim that they mamish love you. So Talmidim that love you, people, Rabbi Sente has years and years experience dealing with, pre-marriage bachram. So, he's been around. So please, you have the opportunity to ask him live questions. Go first. You can text me, Asher Parnas over here, and then we'll get to the other questions. Okay, 5 seconds, and then we'll get to the answers. Okay, let's share the polls with everybody. Okay, the first question. Do you think a person should set boundaries with their teenage children or just be open-minded and supportive? 14% said there must be boundaries, otherwise there'll be chaos. 2% said unconditional love and giving the children freedom is the only way in today's chinuch. The whopping winning answer, 79%, there's a balance of boundaries at the same time giving our children freedom to choose as well. Since 79% of people said it, I'm sure they can explain how to do it, because it sounds great. And 5% of people say, honestly, I'm so confused, I don't know myself anymore. If you want to comment anything on this, you can comment. We'll go to the next one.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like moderation is the way to go, at least according to the poll. And like you said, that's the big challenge: how to strike the balance. How does the person do that? And I guess we'll try to talk about that later.
That's why you're here tonight. That's what we want to grill you with. We want to really know how to do that. Okay. Question 2. Where are you holding with the chinuch as of today? 18% seem to have everything under control. Baruch Hashem, doing great. 9%, my children are out of control, basically running the show. It seems like, again, 73% are here because we're all with that challenge. We're doing the best job possible, but sometimes we feel like we're losing the battle. Representative, the last question. Seems like a pretty split answer over here. How do you feel the yeshiva system is today with our children? 39% too restrictive, 16% too permissive, 45%, I think they have a great balance. I trust them with our children's chinuch.
Well, you probably ask which yeshivas they're in, and maybe that would be the.
The 45% said they're all by Rabbi Center, so I don't know.
Okay, great.
Okay, you want to comment on any of these, or just go straight into the questions?
Let's go straight in.
Okay.
But it's very good to be able to have an idea of what people are thinking and how they see the system.
We have people into it, 100%. Okay. First question. Hi, Rabbi Center. We've been doing a lot of research in Chinuch approaches with our now teenagers. We've listened to many Coach Menachem fabulous programs and heard so many different mahalchim. We're finding it very confusing. The strong approach, the strong direct approach, the passive but firm approach, the loving and firm approach, and now everybody talks about the unconditional love approach. How do we know with our children which approach is the correct one for them based on their needs for chinuch, and how to set boundaries for that for each child as well?
This is it, right? This is the question.
This is the $1 million question. We have a few more of them, but this is one of the $1 million questions.
I think this is I think today's world is the $1 billion question with inflation. So I think the answer is as follows. This is a very important answer, and like you said, this is probably the most important thing we can talk about. How is a person supposed to know? So, my dear friend Yossi Ben Shushan was on your show not long ago, and I spoke to him a few days ago, and he said, by all means, you could say my name, you could argue with me, you could agree with me. Yossi and I are very much on the same page, even though you'll hear something very different than what he said, because that's what we're talking about. His focus was a different focus than mine. But one thing that he said that I'll agree to is he said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you your children. And if he would give someone else your children, they wouldn't necessarily be able to do the same job. Now, the way that I'm going to explain it is as follows. We're supposed to know our children. Our job is to know our children. And the same way we all understand that if a child is crying, now I'm not that great with intuition this way, but a mother will know if her child is hungry or a child is tired or a child is, needs to change a diaper. Now, how does a mother know that? The child's just crying. And a mother can't even describe to you how she knows the answer to that. But there's something instinctive that a mother knows because she knows her child. And the same way that's true when we speak about how a person is supposed to deal with their children. It really comes down to we need to spend time with our kids. And the thing that's the biggest challenge, perhaps, is we are so distracted as adults. We're working so hard. We have so much that's vying for our attention. And the more time we spend with our kids, the more we're going to understand instinctively what it is that they need. And, we talk about there, rules of chinuch. And part of why I feel that there's no rule is because if a person is trying to understand his child, then he knows what his child needs. If he sticks to people are telling him you have to respond this way or that way, becomes mechanical, so then he's not really being in touch with his instinct of what he thinks is right. And that, I think, is the most important thing when it comes to chinuch, because every child's going to be different. And the only way to know how to react differently is to know your child. And we need to spend time with them. We have to create a environment where a child feels comfortable telling you how they feel. And there are times when children are suppressing, and very often I've heard where people have said, my parents don't know me. Now, how in the world can we be mechanech our children if we don't know them? And even if we do know them, if they think we don't know them, so they think that we don't understand them. So then the way that we're interacting with them, they don't feel is coming from your understanding of me. The Piasetzner writes about the importance for a parent or a talmid to go down to a parent or mechanech, to go down to the level of the talmid. As Coach Menachem mentioned, we want to hold their hands. And he says that in order to do that, you have to become immature. Or you have to get into their maturity level, whatever that means, and understand them. And I think that the biggest mistake that a parent or a mechanech can make is to say the words, which we often have a taiva to say, is, I don't understand you. I don't understand how you could do that. I don't understand why you're doing that. But that itself is an indication of the fact that you are not the right person to be talking to me. Because if you don't understand me, so then how could you tell me what I'm supposed to do? You don't get it. But if you say, I do understand you, but even though I understand you, this is what we have to do to get out of this, or to improve, or to be better. So it boils down to There is no one answer to this question. The answer is understand your kids, know your kids, spend time with your children. If we spend more time, I know Rabbi Shor, he told me once, he said his father of Gedalia Shor never missed dinner with the family. The entire family sat around. Rabbi Gedalia Shor was a Rosh Hashiva, and he was a person who was involved in Klal Yisrael. He never missed dinner with the family. Because you have to know your children, be able to talk to them, be able to know what they're going through, know where they're at. And then you'll instinctively know which child needs to be pushed more and which child needs to be coddled more and how a person's supposed to do it.
So you're saying that really they should start when they're younger. If you wake up when they're having the struggles, some parents feel like they just don't connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are parents that tell me, I don't enjoy spending time with my kid. It makes me crazy. So if a person starts at a young age where he's already established a relationship with a child, and it's very important at a young age to do that. So then as the child gets older, you can continue to cultivate that relationship, which is so critical.
In Murray, Rabbi Center. Let's take a live question. You're on.
Thank you. Okay, my question is as follows. I have two questions. First one is, if Yitzchak Avinu, who personified Gvura, din boundaries, mistakenly didn't enforce proper boundaries with his own son, how are we supposed to know what our boundaries should look like, when to enforce and how to enforce? And then my second question is, when you were saying about, with healthy children, today's generation, especially in teenagers, they struggle so much in so many different areas. Like, how do we define a healthy child, healthy teenagers as opposed to not healthy?
Okay, I'll try to answer both of them. If I forget something, please help me out. So in general, whenever we talk about Gedolei Yisrael, am I supposed to jump in now? Am I doing the right thing?
Unless you want me to answer. I mean, if you want, I can answer whatever you want.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
You go first. If I feel different, I'll let you know.
I got it. Yitzchak, anytime we speak about something that the Avos HaKadoshim did, any flaw in the Avos HaKadoshim would be so indiscernible by us. And Rabbi Aaron Kotler writes about this in Mishnah's Rabbi Aaron. It would be so indiscernible. It's such a doc. It's so subtle we would never even be able to see it. So somehow Yitzchak Avinu had the slightest flaw in this area, but the idea is for us to learn from it. That's exactly why the Torah writes these stories. It's not just random stories that are interesting, or it's not just history, but rather the whole point is for us to be able to draw from it and to be able to learn from it. So Yitzchak Avinu had a soft spot for Esav. Whatever the reason is if it was because he saw Esav was struggling, if it was because Esav himself exhibited a certain amount of gvura, so he identified with Esav, but somehow there was something there that we have to try to understand the importance of us also setting boundaries. But the fact that is in some way there was a slight subtle infraction on Yitzchak's part, it won't be perfect either. And I don't think there's such a thing as perfect parenting, but there's parenting that comes from love, and part of that is my attempt to try to help you to get to where you have to get to by setting those boundaries. As far as today's generation, so I was makabel from my Rebbein. We're going to speak next week about anxiety. I'm not an anxiety professional, but anxiety seems to be the biggest problem. I've heard from many professionals, what's the biggest problem we face? It's anxiety. Anxiety is all over the place. Why do people have anxiety? Maybe, this is what I was makabel from my Rebbein, maybe anxiety comes because people have never been taught how to deal with adversity. They've never dealt with boundaries. They've never had boundaries. When you don't have boundaries and all of a sudden something that you want is out of your reach, you don't know how to deal with that. So making healthy children might very well be establishing boundaries when they're young. And that way, when they're older, something happens that's not in the way that they want it to happen. Okay, so, I didn't get what I wanted. It didn't work out exactly the way I wanted it to. And anxiety comes when a person you don't have the tools how to deal with anything. So, it could be that if we start with establishing healthy boundaries at a young age, and of course with love, and everything has to come with a feeling that this is coming out of care and concern. So then we can help our children be more healthy. Now, how does a person know if his child is healthy? I think there are two answers to that question. One answer is know your child. He should be comfortable, he or she should be comfortable communicating with you and telling you that how they feel inside. And sometimes there's children suffering inside and parents don't even know. But if the child feels that my parent cares and is not gonna fall apart if I tell them that I'm suffering, so then they'll hear. And the other way is by speaking, having open rapport with the Rebbeim, with a person's own mentor or Rebbe or Rav, or with the teacher of the school, and finding out what I'm seeing, is this healthy, and is this a good approach to deal with this child or not?
I want to just go into another topic. I have another question, but before we just want to clarify a little bit.
Yeah.
The way I'm understanding it is always there's different levels of chinuch, right? When you start off, everybody starts off with the model A, whatever that is. But then as children grow up and as things change, we start slowly change our chinuch levels, or things that we wouldn't accept that now we do have to accept as things change. So my question is, when do we know that from going from the mainstream regular chinuch that we need to do, and we have to like ease up on that? When do we, I guess, I don't know the right way to the question is more like, when do we go from regular chinuch more to crisis chinuch? When do we know when that shift is?
Well, we only go that shift when there's crisis, right? No,
Right.
You only go to crisis chinuch if there's a crisis. We don't have to automatically go to a place of permissiveness, there's importance for to realize that there's a place for crisis chinuch, right? But so that really depends on the resilience of your child. There's a book called All for the Boss, Rabbi Yosef Herman. Now, you look at the way that he deprived his children of a lot of different things, but his children had resilience, and they were able to do that. Now, Rabbi Yosef Herman, at the same time, so he would go out and play sports with the kids, and get them to go to yeshiva, the kids that were not his children, because those children didn't have that resilience. I'll tell you a quick story. I was a Talmud of Moshe Shapiro. I was in a shir by Moshe Shapiro, and the shir was a lot of older Yungalites. Some of them were even Talmidei Chachamim. I had the keys to the shul, so that's why they let me in. So in this shul, when the Talmidim asked questions, Moshe, could be very, very sharp with his answers. Very sharp. The way I heard from Rameir Stern or Baron Cutler would hand you your head on a platter if you asked a question that wasn't good. It was a similar type of thing. Now, this shir was right near a Baal Tshuva yeshiva, and somehow the Baal Tshuva yeshiva found out about the shir, and they asked Moshe Shapiro if he'll allow some of the older Baal Tshuva to come to the shir. So it was a very lopsided shir. We had on the one hand these Talmidei Chachamim, and then you had these Baal Tshuva. And whenever the Talmud Chacham would ask a question, he would have his head handed to him. Then one of the Bali Tshuva asked a question, and it was not a question which I thought Ramosha would appreciate. And I was ready for him to totally decimate him. And he answered him with such gentle and soft, and it was, and you could tell the difference, because Ramosha realized there's some people that can deal with this, and there's others that can't. And we have to be comfortable enough with ourselves and understanding that our children can be different to be able to give them different responses. And that's what he did right there in front of us. And he was he was like so soft on this other person, while at the same time, when you have the son of a tremendous he says, how could you, and how could you say that? And he totally tore him to pieces. So when we switch to crisis mode of chinuch, is when we feel that our children are not, they don't have the resilience to deal with that. And it's okay for them to be that way. It's okay for a person to have, for whatever that reason is, whether or not it has to do with an experience they had in yeshiva, whether it has to do with the experience they had in their family. But that doesn't mean that they're not destined for greatness, because right now they need a softer approach. But really it boils down to that we have to be spending enough time and have enough of an open line of communication in order for us to know when to make that change.
I think before we can. Oh, just a second.
One second. Go. Continue, Menachem.
Going back to Rabbi Herman, how he, how the chinuch that he did, I think many people, have to stop over there. He was able to spend time with them and give them that hug that you mentioned. And then he can hold back things. But the question is, today's parents, like we know, are busy, they're not around. And at the end of the day, the question is how to practically be there for the child when you're all at work, there's a lot going on, there's other kids, and you don't give the ahava is not as much seen. So now what do we do then?
So I appreciate that very much, that question. We don't have as much time. The reality is you don't have as much time. But I don't think it's necessarily the quantity of time. I think it's the quality of time. It's true, could be we don't eat dinner with our children. We don't have family dinners as often as Gedaliah Shore had. But when we're with our children, so if a person is going to put his phone away, like there's a chasheva woman in Brooklyn who told me that when she goes home, she turns her phone off. If someone wants to reach her, they reach her on her landline. It's a whole different thing because she's able to focus. She's with her children. She's with her grandchildren. She's there and she's giving them undivided attention. And that is something that we can all do. And a lot of people struggle doing that because whether it's because they think that they have to answer their business questions right away or because they're things that are vying for their attention. But if we can carve out time when we're giving our children their undivided attention, we can establish the cords of love that are necessary in order for us to be able to have that type of relationship.
Okay, you're on Talmud.
Hi, Rabbi. My question is like this. How do we do early chinuch? For example, like under the age of 3, there's not really chinuch ha-mitzvahs necessarily, something like that. But how do we start to, set the tone for, number one, that the children feel the love, and number 2, that they understand that we're trying to raise them in a certain oifim that's a Torah-dik oifim?
Vivaldic. So I'll try to answer both of those. It's nice to have a Talmud on. Thanks for calling. So first of all, when our children are young, the Chovos HaLevavos says that the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a child so needy is in order to establish a love between a parent and a child. And it's important for us to be able to sacrifice for our children. It's nice to be able to get a nurse that can wake up in the middle of the night for your child. It's nice to have someone during the day who can take your child out for walks. But if we're not working on that love that we have with our child at a young age, so then we're going to miss out on a tremendous opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that a person should never have a nurse. Like if you need a good night's sleep, great. But at the same time, we need to be spending time with our children, changing our children's diapers and dealing with our children when they're cranky. And that, says the Chovos HaLevavos, builds the love. And the yisoid of all chinuch is love. And if a child feels love from a parent, so then a child knows it's real. So the first thing we have to do is we have to work on investing in our children just to love them. And the second thing is there is no replacement for being a role model. And when you want to work on chinuch of your children when they're young, so a person should work on themselves. And it's very important. And people have told me when my children are older, I don't want to have this in the house, I don't want to have that in the house. But you can't wait till you're older and then all of a sudden try to pull it out of the house because it's just not going to happen. So at a young age, a person should already start living the life that he wants his child to see. And if a person does that, so then the child has what to model. I think that perhaps could be the answer.
Wow, even putting away his phone when the kid is 1 year old.
Yeah, 100%.
I like that. Here's a question somebody sent in. I have 5 boys. The older ones, Baruch Hashem, are doing great. They're learning stark. My youngest son seems to be having a really hard time. I'm not sure where we went wrong with him. Maybe since he's the youngest, he's more spoiled. we're not sure. Can you give us some clarity why one would be so different from his siblings?
Yeah. Okay, it's a great question. I'm a youngest, so I can relate with that child. And I definitely was not the easiest of all the children in my family for my parents to be mechanech, even though my mother, Baruch Hashem, I always say my mother has selected memory. She chose to forget all of the times that I was not so easy to deal with. But I don't know if it necessarily has to do with a parent being tired or not being able to deal with things. That where you are in your family structure also affects a lot. I myself grew up in a very prominent family, and I struggled with the fact that I had a lot to live up to. Not just a father who was world famous, but my brother who was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. And I'd walk around and people would say to him, "Oh, are you the younger brother?" And that was very hard for me. My brother didn't go through that, and that's different. It's different growing up in a shadow, and every child grows up in a different circumstance, even if they're growing up in the same house. And they could also grow up in a house, sometimes the house, there's more money, there's the family is more successful and there's more privilege. That just has to do with the dynamics of what's going on. And there's also different neshamas. There are different neshamas that a person, because Baruch Hu gives different neshamas, and the neshamas there's a different balance of all of the spheres that are in the neshamas. And for that reason, a parent needs to be flexible. It doesn't mean that necessarily anything is wrong with this child. And the thing that I'd like to bring out the most is we tend to think that our children that are smoothest are the better ones. But the truth is that a child that struggles is even more precious. And the Sfarim HaKadoshim write about how special our generation is because we're struggling. And there's no one that can say that our generation is not struggling more than previous generations. No one would say that. And our generation is the most precious. Doesn't mean we're on the highest madrega of Kedusha, we're learning the best, we have the best down. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves the fact that Klal Yisrael is struggling. That's the Avodas Hashem that the Baal Tanya is speaking about. So we have a child that's struggling. We have to respect that. We have to learn to appreciate that. I think that realize that every child has his own tafkid, his own place in the world.
Okay, let's get to the next question over here. I feel live, but
Yeah.
I'm going to do this question. Okay, this next $1 million question. You ready?
Yeah,
Here we go.
so I'll tell you after here.
I'm trying to set healthy and safe boundaries with our kids at the same time, convey unconditional love. It seems to be contradictory. Rabbi Center, can you please explain us how to do this? Or play it out.
Okay, can you say that one more time?
I'm trying to set healthy and safe boundaries with our children at the same time, convey unconditional love.
Right.
So Rabbi Center, can you please explain us how to do this? Or maybe even we can role play it. I don't know, because we're trying to understand it. It sounds cute in words and in theory, but we want to understand it l'maisa.
Okay, great. I think there's a number of different things a person has to do in order to, first of all, I think that conversation is extremely important. One of the things that the Piasetzner writes about, and there's also there's a personality named Janusz Korczak. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Janusz Korczak was a Jewish person who lived in the time of the Holocaust, and he speaks about how we have to respect a child's intellect. And the Piasetzner also speaks about how we have to engage them in conversation. And engaging them in conversation is having them to think about what we're saying and appreciate the fact that we don't talk at them, we talk with them. We talk with our children and we talk to them, and in that way we can help them to understand why what we're doing is really for their best. And giving them the opportunity to talk to us. Now, I think that an extremely important detail is that we ourselves need to model self-control. In other words, there's parents who at a young age struggled a lot financially, And because they struggled, they lived with a lot of boundaries. There are things that they couldn't buy, the things that they couldn't have. There's vacations they couldn't go on. But as they got older, and Baruch Hashem, they got more successful. Now they're allowing themselves the certain luxuries. Now the children never saw the struggle beforehand. So all the children are seeing is parents that are allowing themselves to have everything that they want. If we don't model ourselves boundaries in our lives, so then it's very hard for a child to understand, why do I have to live in a boundary and you don't? But the moment the child says that a parent is depriving themselves of certain things, and it doesn't mean to live, a life where a person's not, at all giving himself any of the luxuries that he wants, but there's still boundaries. There's certain boundaries of things that I can afford, and it's something that I have the ability to have, but I chose not to. Then we can also show them that this is a lifestyle. There's a lifestyle that we have to have. And that lifestyle is one where we are living with self-discipline or control. And I think that the difference between Yaakov and Esav that we speak about in this week's Parsha is Esav didn't have a lifestyle of growth. Esav was asoi. Asoi means he was complete. He was the way he was. Yaakov was constantly moving, he was growing. And if we model that lifestyle ourselves and we realize that a person wants to grow, so then he has to create for himself certain boundaries of things that this is not good for me, and I'm going to grow by withholding. Just like we said, the Malach tells every blade of grass that I want you to grow, and the way to grow is by stretching yourself. The way to grow is by a person getting out of his comfort zone. So therefore, this is our life. We're not here for things to be easy. Now this is extremely important. A person can embrace and enjoy the struggle. You can enjoy that. People enjoy going to a gym. People enjoy exercising and pushing themselves to their limits. I'm not saying a person should be sad or mad or depressed. Chas v'shalom. But the question is, what are you going to enjoy? You're going to enjoy just relaxing, or you're going to enjoy becoming a better person and working hard on yourself and working and becoming better and feeling the satisfaction of the fact that I've grown, even though it's hard work. So a child sees that that's what a parent does. The child sees that that's what a parent, the lifestyle that the parent leads. So then they themselves will also follow suit.
Beautiful, very powerful. We have more questions on that. Okay, we have a live question. You're on.
Hi, Rabbi Center. Thank you for taking my question.
My pleasure.
I know you were talking before about mothers being around and available for their children as much as possible. I'm a Mora. I work from home. I keep my kids home with me for the first few years, and I'm obsessed with my babies. But for some reason, as my kids get older, I lose that obsession. Am I being clear? I find I'm not as interested in their day, or I'm more lose my patience with them quicker. How can I change that? I still love them. Every time I think of that thought of something happening to them, I can't even imagine it. But for some reason, I can't show it to them.
Wow. Well, first of all, it's possible that you've got too much on your plate. A lot of us have too much on our plate. A lot of us are dealing with too much, and it's very hard for us. And sometimes children take a lot of energy. So if it's a choice of whether or not we're gonna, and I don't know what's happening in your life, but if it's a choice of whether or not I'm going to be able to take on more outside of my house or take on more inside of my house, it's important for us to realize that our children are our legacies. I once heard from a very smart woman. She said, "You're only as happy as your least happy child." And your children are your future, and you have to have the strength to be able to deal with them. And sometimes they're difficult. We need to find enough resources inside of ourselves to have the patience for them.
Also, in general, some people, they love the babies. They get older, they have challenges. At the end of the day, it gets harder. It does get harder. And then some parents feel like they lost the love. They don't know where it went. They're like, where's that cute little kid?
Yeah, so what do you say, Coach Menachem? So what do you do?
A lot of work, a lot of inner work.
Yeah.
The truth is, like you're saying, sometimes we're busy at work, busy running, and we don't have time for our kids, right? So, we hope they behave because I need to do something more important than them.
Yeah.
And then when the challenges come up, to realize what buttons it's pressing, my kid is not being exactly the way I want, and slowly they can, veer off. You don't feel that it's just not doing what I want, doesn't behave after over and over, so it takes that to realize, it takes the time to realize, where am I, what am I feeling about my kids, and what do I need to do to be there for them.
I think it also takes self-awareness. If you realize that you have that, then you put koiches into it and you focus on it. It's not people get very into the routine. You have a bunch of kids at 6 o'clock. This one has to go to sleep, so that one you could drive at 7. So this one at 8. So if you know that's the matziv, you focus. You realize you have the problem. Now you work on it a little bit. You say, okay, I have to give this kid. Everybody has their own 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. When you have 10 kids, 20 minutes is 3 hours. It doesn't work. But I think you have to put that focus and really hyper focus on them and realize that it's as they get older, they get when they're cute and they're 1, 2 years old, they go straight to sleep. 3, 4, they say no. 5, 6, they just go out. So and
younger, it takes less work. It's natural. When they get older, it takes much more work. Like you're saying, to be immature, play with them with their toys, but you're not interested.
Okay. Rabbi Chaim, you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, you're on.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I have 2 unrelated questions. First of all, my almost 5-year-old, she's asking us a lot of deep hashkafa questions, like, Hashem makes everything, how could he make himself? Or on Shabbos, like, why can't we use scissors if it doesn't make noise? Things like that. What's like the best way to respond to her? The second question is, I feel like, we're younger parents, and in our generation, there's a lot of fear of what our children are going to turn out like. How do we minimize that fear and parent with confidence without this, overwhelming sense of, thinking about the outcome as opposed to the process?
Wow. Those are 2 very, those are.
Rabbi Chaim, I told you before you came on. I said this is the real deal.
Yeah. So you do me a favor, Ushi. It seems like my connection is not stable. So if I'm having issues, I could switch to a different.
No, right now everything I see is good.
Okay, great.
Still stable and everything's stable. We're stable. If there's any issues, I'll let you know.
Excellent. So the first question that we spoke about was, how do we deal with all these deep questions? And a lot of those questions are not meant to be dealt with. The Gemara in Talmud says there's certain questions which the Chacham were asked, which they said, we're not gonna, like, who created Hashem and those types of things. How exactly to divert that question, I think, is really the challenge, and to talk about the yesodus of the Amunah of what we do know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we're not expected to know everything about Hashem. If we knew everything about Hashem, probably that would mean that we would be Hashem. But that type of question of the particular one you're speaking about of, who created Hashem is going perhaps past where we're supposed to go, and that's a child that's very deep and has obviously a lot of thought process. And I think it's a question of diverting that and process and channeling it towards other very important deep concepts about Maimon Har Sinai, about the Makos, about mass revelation, or whatever it is which are the yesodus of our Amunah, and to try to keep them focused on that. And at the same time, not to ever suppress a question to make a person feel like they can't ask questions, but just to try to divert that to something else. That's what I would say to do it in that type of situation. And to say, well, it's such a great question. And to say we don't have to know all the answers to all the questions. One of the things we celebrate on Pesach is Kadesh Yishul Atzinoikis. The children should ask. We never talk about answering them. They should ask this, they should ask that. And we don't necessarily need to know all the answers. No, we need to know the Yesodus of our Amunah. The other question that you asked was as far as our own anxiousness about how our children are going to turn out. I think it's very important for us to realize that our children are not an extension of ourselves. And we are not in control of how our children turn out. We have to do our part, but it's not my life. It's my child's life. And I also have to empower my child to make his own decisions. In the end of the day, at a certain age at least, it's his life and his decisions. So I have to do my part. And my advice is to love my child and to try to give him the best opportunities they possibly can. After that, it's really up to them. So if we realize it's not us, we're not responsible for the decisions our children make. They have their own neshama, they have their own bechira, they make the decisions. So we can just do our best to be the best coach we can be. So every one of us is a coach. We're all here to be coaches. And that's what Piasetzner writes about in his Akdama, is that the Ikur Mechanech of a person is himself. The Rebbeim, the parents, are there to coach. They're there just to help, to assist. But really, you are in charge of your own destiny, you being the child. And a person realizing that, so then I do what I can, and after that, it's all up to you.
I was going to say what I heard a little bit, but they say that, they say that, that you could see two neighbors and they both basically within the same realms are doing similar chinuch, and they're both, they go into the same shul and the same schools. You see one person, the kids are murdic, and the other people, the kids are struggling. And, oh, what did I do wrong? It's nothing to do with you. It's every child has their own journey. Every child it's your, right. The Fakert, I even heard even Tifer, the Fakert gave you a schus of the child's harder, because this child needs you as a better parent versus not.
100%. And like I mentioned before, these children are precious neshamas. The children that are struggling, that if there's a struggle, a child that struggles through their chinuch, whether it's because they have a hard time reading, they have a hard time understanding, they have a hard time sitting, that there's something super precious about their avodas Hashem.
Okay, let's go to the next live question. You're on.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Achiel. I have a question about where the chinuch really started from, because I think that what we're dealing is also chinuch that a lot of parents made mistakes. So we're dealing with much more than just our chinuch. Is it true that the chinuch is we dealing with a chinuch that's before, or we have our own chinuch with our kids?
Want to clarify the question? I'm not understanding so much. Are you saying that the chinuch we're giving over? What your question is it coming because your parents did a certain chinuch A and you're doing over chinuch A, or you're supposed to learn yourself chinuch and do a fresh chinuch? Is that your question?
My question is if it's like one big chinuch, let's say from Avram Avinu till now, or is it just my family? That means that if I don't do the best job, I could kind of blame my parents. And also we don't, you know what I mean? It's not just only on us. And also we are much less mature. So we are kids that's raising kids because we don't really.
That's what your parents said about you.
No, I think my siblings raised me, but.
So I think Rabbi said, I think what his question is Lamaisa, a lot of people are brought up not with the best chinuch. So maybe the question is, if you brought up not with the best chinuch, what's your cries and what are you supposed to do about it?
Yeah.
So I want to just tell you a quote that I saw, and I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell the exact quote, but it's describing the problem with the young generation. They have no respect for elders. They have no etiquette. they gobble their food. That's the quote I remember, that line. They gobble their food, they eat fast. And what's going to be with this to the next generation? This quote is from Socrates. Okay, he probably didn't say it in English, but my point is that this has been going on forever, where people are saying the next generation, wow, they're terrible, they're horrible. Look at this. This is like all the way back from the time of the Rishonim already. People are going to say, what's going to be with the next generation? They're impossible. So, we look at ourselves and or our children and say, well, we're so dysfunctional. So like, can you already expect from us? But I don't really think that it's really that much different than it was before. And we are, we those of us that have had mistakes, that have experienced mistakes, are possibly the ones that are the best to correct them. We have the tools because we've experienced it. We've been through it ourselves. So again, if a person right now is triggered, it's very hard. And it's very hard a person who's triggered to expect them to react in a logical way. Because it's when a person gets triggered, so then it's almost as if they don't have bechira. But if a person went through challenges in chinuch and whatever it might be, and they themselves feel like they lost out because of it, but we know what to do. We know how to make things what the corrections that should be, and it's not up to us that our children, we should live vicariously through our children, chas v'shalom. It's not like we have to make our children like, we don't want you to make the mistakes that I make. That's the worst thing, because then a person gets himself triggered when he sees his kid doing something that he did, and he gets so upset about it. But at the same time, we can make corrections in whatever the chinuch that we got to give that properly to the next generation. There's no reason why not. And to blame it on a previous generation is just kicking the can down the road. And one of the things, Abelazar ben Dordaya, he was pretty messed up. And Abelazar ben Dordaya, before he was Rebbe Elazar ben Dordaya, he was Elazar ben Dordaya, was doing a lot of affairs. And when he realized that it's time for him to get his act together, he said, Haram ugvois bikshu olai rachamim. Shemesh v'yareach. Haram ugvois. Haram is the mountains. What are the haram? The haram are the hoyrim. Hoyrim is the parents. Like, it's like, I want my parents to this, I heard from Harari Raful, I want my parents to daven for me, because you're the ones that didn't do a good job on my education. So it's your fault. So you go daven for me. And then, and they said, we're going to daven for ourselves. You have to daven. Until he said, Eina dover tali elabi. Elazar ben Dordaya realized, I'm not blaming anyone. I have to fix myself. I got to deal with my own issues. And then when a person does that, then he is empowered to then help others. So our chinuch of our children is something that we are responsible for. I don't think that we can necessarily say that there's previous generations that are at fault for what we're doing.
Very good. Here's another question. How do I set boundaries for my children if society is so permissive? Anything called chinuch or rules, boundaries are called for today's children controlling, abusive. Whatever you tell them to do, you can tell you're not letting me go. Please advise.
Wow. So I'll tell you a story that happened to me. I was in my Rebbe's house, and his child was not acting in a way that the Rebbetzin approved of. She said to her son, Yitzchak, that's not his name, but we could pretend, Yitzchak, you can't do that. You're a kohen. You're a kohen. It's not befitting of a kohen. And I saw tremendous wisdom in this story. The wisdom I saw in this story was, she's telling her son, maybe all your friends are doing that, but you're different. You're a kohen. You can't act like everybody else. There's a story about a special needs child. The story came to Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. There were two schools to send them to. One school which had better services but was less religious, and the other school which was more religious but didn't have as good services. So the parents came to Reb Shlomo Zalman and asked them what to do. Reb Shlomo Zalman said, "Did you ask your child?" Which there's tremendous wisdom in that. Again, engaging the child. They said, "No, he's special needs." He said, "Let's bring him in. Let's ask him." So the child said he wants to go to the school with the better services. Shlomo Zalman said, "Okay." He said, "But I want you to be my shliach. You have to make sure that everything that happens there is being done properly. And if anyone asks you, tell them that Shlomo Zalman Auerbach sent you." The kid was so empowered, like all of a sudden, like he became an important person here, that he now has to, that he was able to keep his, at least for himself, he was able to keep his sensitivities. So if we can give our children a sense of pride, family pride of who we are. And, if I could instill in my children, you're a center. Now, the center family started with my father. My grandfather was not a person that was connected to his Yiddishkeit. It doesn't mean that your last name is Finkel or your last name is Soloveitchik. It could be, you can create for yourself an own pride in your family, which is what my father did. And every family can do that. And that means us living up to a certain expectation. If we're just going to go with the flow, of course our kids are going to go with the flow. But if a child sees that this is the way it goes in our family, and our family is a certain pride of who we are, and we're not the same as everybody else. And it doesn't have to be in every single area. You have to be the Gadol Hador and everything. But if a child sees that a father, the way he davens is different than everyone else. He doesn't just daven like everyone else. He davens with intense kavanah, and he's like, wow. Look at the way my father does Aleinu, even if it's just the Aleinu. My father's Aleinu is like, so I see that my father's not going with the flow. So then every person has a nakuda in which they're not going with the flow. You're teaching him how to be able to have the strength to say, like, I'm different than everyone else. And I think that is the most important nakuda, to empower your family with the ability to rise above what it seems to be much more commonplace.
But that's only after you give them the hug, like we discussed before.
Everything is after the hug. Everything comes there.
Oh, we should talk about
a lot of hugs, not just one hug, a lot of hugs.
So we should talk about the hugs more.
Yeah, we should. There's two things we should talk about more. We should talk more about the hugs. We should talk more about the davening. But I think that's also something which, in other words, I saw a comment that you have to daven. For sure, we have to daven our hearts out. We should daven every single day for our children. There's no question about that. And we need to siyata d'shmaya, and every person has to, and that's part of our ishtadlus. Part of our ishtadlus, and you see by Avram, I spoke about Avram, that he was always with Yishmael. But he also daven, Lu Yishmael yichel lefanecha, daven for Yishmael, and that's for sure also. But the love is, everything is about, the foundation of everything is the love, and it's not just the love, it's expressing the love. It's conveying the love. Because there are times that there are parents that tell me, I love my child, and the child doesn't know that. I would tell you something that happened to me. It was probably the saddest moment in my career as a machach. And a parent in my office, struggling with his son, who was a good kid. But they didn't get along. I told him, I want you to go out of my office and I want you to say something nice to your son. And he said, I cannot think of one nice thing to say about my son. This is a boy learning in yeshiva, a boy that had no issues with Shmiras Einayim, no issues with Shmiras Einayim, no issues with Shmiras Habris. This is a boy that he was a regular yeshiva bachar. But the parent couldn't find a nice thing to say about his own child. It was frightening to me. But if a person doesn't express love to his child, so then the child's not going to have it back. And there's kemayim panim al panim. The child has to understand love. And a lot of times, there's a parent once told me, parenting is not a popularity contest. I think it's a cute line, but I think it is a popularity contest. I think your children need to love you. And if your children don't get that message, it doesn't come through that everything I'm doing is because I care about you, I love you. So then you can't move forward. You can't go past the hug until the child knows that you're hugging them. So you're right. We definitely have to speak more about that. I hope we did.
How does that happen?
How could a parent get to that place? You mean? The parent is extremely critical of himself and of other people, but his expectations for his child were so high that he couldn't appreciate. I had another parent whose child was also doing great, but he was Hasidish and his child wasn't. And I said to him, "Your son is doing so well." He says, "You know, when I see my son shuckle, all I see is his chup, because he's the father's Hasidish. I'm like, your son is shuckling during davening. He's davening with kavana. He's erlich. I mean, show him some love." Couldn't do it. And as much as like we talk about trying to build our children, but if we can't establish that type of love, so then the child's not going to embrace it.
So what's the first step for such a parent?
First step is learning to communicate that and learning to. They can't. Yeah. It's very hard. They have to be taught to appreciate it. And I don't. It's a lot of inner work. That parent needs to do a lot of inner work because they're not happy themselves. They're not happy with themselves. And they blame.
Let's jump into the next question because it's
sure. I'm with you. Go.
Okay. Ask your next question. Let's see if it ties in.
So you were talking about the parent who had trouble telling love or displaying love or showing love to their child, a perfectly good child. What if you're the child who hasn't felt that love?
At what age are we talking about? As an adult or as a child?
Well, as an adult, you're realizing that you didn't get the love as a child. So the repercussions are astronomical.
Yes, they definitely are. It's true. And a person has to take care of themselves. And I'm sorry if for a person that had that and didn't feel that love. And you know, there are many different ways that people convey love. One of them is through action, the other one is through speech. The different love languages that we know of. And sometimes parents try to convey love in one language and the child talks a different language and they don't necessarily get it. And sometimes the parents don't give their children the love or don't show their children the love. And I think the important thing is, like I said, to shower our children with love because we realize what it's like to not have it. And maybe because of that, we have different challenges. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us all challenges. And the fact that we have those challenges is not something that we should say means that because of that I'm broken. It means that Hashem gave me a challenge and that's my tafkid in this world. And it's extremely precious. That tafkid is precious and maybe it's harder for me to do things. But the fact that it's harder doesn't mean that it's worse. And different people have different challenges. I myself have a reading disability. I don't read well. And it was a big challenge for me when I was younger. And it took me a long time to realize that just because I'm challenged doesn't mean that I shouldn't learn. Because I thought for a while, okay, I'm not supposed to learn. And I almost outed as a young boy because look, I have a learning disability. So clearly Hashem doesn't want me to learn. It's not learning, I'm sorry, a reading disability. I have a reading. I never davened for the Yamid because I couldn't. I did once. It was a disaster, the biggest disaster you could imagine. I was breaking my teeth. I mean, one of the things that I was gifted with is my parents gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. It came from my parents, and I was able to deal with the humiliation of being in front of a few hundred people and messing up my davening. My laning on my mitzvah was a disaster because I have a reading disability, which my father has and my brothers have. It's genetic in our family. But I could have thought because of that therefore, okay, learning's not for me, but it's not true. And part of the reason why I feel like I can relate to my bachrim is because I'm not like the brilliant person who everything went smooth for and everything was perfect. And that's our tafkid in the world. If a person says, I didn't get love as a child, so that Hashem is giving you a challenge. And Be'ez Hashem, embrace it and find the love, find it in yourself and find it in others and pass it on.
In
Thank
therapy,
you.
there's
The only thing that I'd like to mention, if it's okay,
Sure.
is that it seems like there's a lot of judgment that happens because of it. And that part makes the process and the growth and the journey astronomically more difficult than it has to be because of comments from relatives, neighbors, family, or whatever it is. And if only they could understand or become more in tune to know that there might be something underneath they might not know about, and it's too private, inappropriate, or even lashon hara to talk about.
Sure, without a question. I want to tell you something. We have some talmidim in our yeshiva that come from compromised backgrounds, whatever it might be, whether it's from a broken home or different situations. And sometimes the Rebbeim would say to me, like, you have to tell us beforehand. And I don't do that. And I told them, every single child that you have, just because it looks like everything is okay on the surface, doesn't mean that there's not serious challenges that are there. So don't make an assumption just because one person, on the surface, it looks like they've got issues, and the other person, okay, they don't have issues. We have to be able to observe everyone and try to figure out, what are their challenges. And a lot of people aren't aware. And sometimes there's boys that come from, everyone thinks everything's great in their life and everything is perfect, everything's going wonderfully. And underneath, there's so much pain and suffering because no one sees that. So you're 100% right. People shouldn't be judgmental of other people. And sometimes someone isn't functioning. People are like, why are they not functioning? Oh, they must be something. It's their fault. But it could be that they were mistreated in a very severe way. But at the same time, as much as we try to change that, the public perception or the public response, we have to be people that endure, survive, and we become the ones that are going to change it. I'll just leave you with one quick story, Coach Menachem, before we go, okay?
Yeah.
There was a particular person, I'm going to cut to the chase. He was very confrontational with me when I had just opened the yeshiva. And he was a friend of the family, and he came over to me and said, I want to tell you something. I'm a victim of the yeshiva system, and I swore to do everything in my power to destroy it. So you're opening another yeshiva, I'm not helping you. And I said to him, I want to tell you something. I'm also a victim of the yeshiva system, and I swore to do everything in my power to fix it. So our choices are, even people have suffered, and I definitely had things where I could look back and say that my chinuch was far from perfect. Different rebbeim in different situations. Like I told you, I struggled with reading myself. It wasn't easy for me. Many times I felt like I was publicly embarrassed by my rebbeim or whatever it might be, and my rebbeim didn't understand me. So what are we going to do about it? We have two choices. Either we could just, complain and we could just be critical and we could just say that they're the problem, or we could say, okay, we have to fix it. We have to do our part, do whatever we can. And it doesn't mean even have to go into chinuch. I can fix it within my little Dalit Amos, my children and my family, and make them more sensitive, and anything that I can, just in order to make things to make people more aware.
Okay, very good. I'm saying there are.
One second, Rabbi Sunday, we have a lot more questions. You're going, or you're good?
I'm with you.
No. Before I say what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
There are
many.
many.
One second, I just want to tell this person also that was on before. He had an amazing share. She should listen to it. Share 119 with Rabbi Russell and Rabbi Solomon on emotional neglect, and it's really a lot what you questioned, and they ran into deep people that had difficult upbringings and different types of emotional neglect. and how to work on ourselves and how to help our children with it. So definitely something you should listen to that share. It was unbelievable. Menachem, sorry.
Right. So there are many people who have a hard time conveying and giving over the love to their children. And looking back, it's because, like what you mentioned, that they didn't get it when they were growing up. And there is an idea in therapy of healing that inner child, that your own inner child that didn't get that emotional love, whatever it was when you were younger. So now you as an adult have to slowly learn how to give it to yourself. And only after that, after accepting yourself, accepting that inner child, and sometimes that inner child can throw a tantrum. It could trigger, once you become aware of what bothers you and be there for yourself, only after that can you be there for your child, understand what's bothering the child, be there, listen, and give them what they need. But it is a lot of work to be able to see what do I need? And just becoming aware that you didn't get it when you grew up, that is a step. And the next step is to see, to be able to give it to yourself. Now that you're older, looking around, understanding what do I need to be able to give it to yourself, and tell yourself, find those positives. Start focusing on the positives, even though it might be very hard in the beginning. But find some positives before you go to sleep. You say, wow, I did this. Wow, you did that. Wow, you're great. You're doing great. Keep it up. And usually what happens is before you go to sleep, you're critical. It's not working out. I didn't finish this, and finish that. What's going to be? Just to change that. Once you can change it with yourself, eventually you can do it for others, for your kids, and Mitzvah Hashem.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go on a little bit different angle over here. Rabbi Sender, we're going to turn the page a little bit. Okay, it's two questions. We'll just combine it. If a child asks for the latest style and clothing, latest gadget, or other things children in the neighborhood have, how do we decide what gashmis to give into our children? First, it's the designer clothes they want. Then it's the concert they want to watch because everybody else is going. Then it's the flight to Florida for winter break. And then it's the new game everybody has. My son tells me that he needs to get clothing that his friends have. Same with the technology. Second part of the question, the second question, I'll just put it together. How could I ask my son not to be busy with all the gadgets and bikes and cell phones, fancy cars, if the adults around us are so engulfed in the gashmis, to drinking by Kadeshin, the newest cars, flying around the world? How do we deal with that with our kids with Chinuch?
Okay. That's about it's about as hard as it gets. I think that there are hazards of living in certain communities. And I'm not going to call out any particular community, but I think that if you want your children not to live a certain lifestyle, and that's what they see around them, probably your smartest thing to do would be to move. It's very hard to expect your children, unless you're going to negate and talk derogatorily about everyone that's around you. It is very hard for you to expect your children to live a different type of lifestyle. And if a person says, like, everyone around me is so indulgent, and I don't want to be that indulgent, I would think the smartest thing to do is to just not be living there. I mean, the Rambam writes about, if there's a culture, there's a society that you don't like, so leave. And if you need to, you go to a desert. Now, you don't have to go to a desert, but if a person says, I'm not comfortable with the way everyone's living around me, it's very hard to expect more of your children. It's very hard to expect that. Unless, as we mentioned before, a person is himself living a different life. If a person is, let's say, a Rav, and he's trying to be makarev people in a certain community, and everyone in that community is acting a certain way, but his child understands my father's the Rav here. This is not the same type of, I'm not held to the same standard because we're just here because we want to be Makar of these people. Then you can expect your children to withhold from what's considered to be acceptable in that world.
A lot of shluchim deal with this. A lot of shluchim.
Yeah, so over there, it's understandable because I'm a shliach. The children know I'm here for a tafkid. And if my father could, he would bring me up somewhere else. And that place, there'd be different sensitivities and there'd be different things that people would do. And they understand that I shouldn't expect to be like everybody else. But if a person's bringing his child up in a certain neighborhood, and it's not because I'm a shliach, it's because this is where I want to live. So if this is what everyone else is doing, how do you expect more from your child? It's very hard to expect more from your child. And the only thing that a person can do, I feel, is to try to and this is a very big challenge, is to talk to his child about what is going to bring happiness in the world. I think Coach Menachem, maybe you could say probably more authoritatively than me, the world is not in a very happy place as far as depression and these types of things. Would you say that that's a correct statement, that there's more depression now than years past?
Sure. People are running, escaping.
People are escaping.
I mean, it's a fact. They say the more luxuries, the more affluence a community has, the more mental health depression there is. I mean, a lot of kids today that have everything, you'll see the comments consistently, I'm depressed, I feel bored, what should I do? I was in Eretz 2 weeks ago, I see these kids, they're running around trying to get 3 shekel drink from the cola, they're busy.
Right. So when I was a kid, we were always bored, and we were okay being bored. We learned how to be bored and just be okay with it. But I'll share with you a story from Beli Lapian, a muscle from Beli Lapian. And I think this is the only way that you could really, and the question is, the challenge is really feeling this and living it, and giving it over to your children. Beli Lapian gives a mushal. I heard this from Rabbi Stern from Beitar, and he told me he said it from Metzasio Solomon, but he thinks maybe Rabbi Metzasio said it from Beli Lapian. There was a child whose father was not well, and he was restricted to a bed, and even the bed he was on a tremendous amount of medication, and he had a lot of nurses and doctors, and there was his bed, basically his bedroom was a hospital room. And they thought that it would be traumatic for the child to go into the room, so they never let the kid in the room. He was never allowed in. And he always hear people coming and going. And he hears like beeps coming from the room. He doesn't know what they are. There's beeping from the machine. He wants to know what's going on inside. So one day when one of the nurses is leaving, he slips into the room. The door's like before the door closed. He sees his father there on a bed. His father's hooked up to all these machines. And there's machines that are making graphs, like of his heartbeat, and there's machines that have drips, and then he sees bottles with pills, and he sees all different types of liquids and everything. This whole room is full of, and there's nurses and doctors, and everyone's on top of him. And the child looks at his father and he says, "Dad, I'm so jealous. You got so much stuff. Dad, you got so much, look at all this stuff. You got machines, you got pills, you got so much things. You're hooked up, all these people here." And the child said to his son, "You should be happy. You don't need these things. I need this just to be able to live. You don't need it." So Rabbi Lapian said, there's people that they need all the latest gadgets and need all the latest toys. And without that, they feel like, they can't. If a person can be happy and he doesn't need those things, it's a blessing. And that's where real happiness is. And even the people that have all these toys, they're not even happy because they're not healthy. Just like this person is hooked up to all these machines, he's not healthy, he's barely surviving, but he's just running away. And if we could show our children that we're really happy. And I think that is the most important thing. When a person speaks about being Meiser Nefesh for Torah and living the life of a young man and not being able to afford a lot of things, if you can have a happy home, that's great. And your children are happy and they see that there's shalom bias in the house and everyone is happy, so then I don't think it's a problem. But if you're not going to be happy and you're stressed out because you yourself or you yourself feel deprived, if you can't foster a feeling of simcha in the house, so then it's practically impossible.
Do you think by telling your kids this speech is going to work?
I don't know if it's telling the kids a speech or living that speech, but and it's not about a speech. I think it's about there's a certain spirit in the house. There's a ruach in the house. It's not like sitting them down and okay, I'm going to give you a drasha. But over the course of I think the Shabbos table is a tremendous platform for a person to be able to share with his children ideas and thoughts, and as we spend time with our children talking about what a person feels good about the fact that he gets close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and a person feels good about, and there's certain things that I just don't need. I don't need it, and if I don't need it, so then why should I have it? It's just going to distract me. It's just an escape. Will it work? Sometimes it will. A lot of times it won't. Like I said, I think the best eitzah is to not live there. A person shouldn't live in a community if he feels that everyone else around him is living on a certain level that they don't like, that they think is inappropriate.
So you're saying there are still communities out there that it's easier to live in.
Absolutely. Baltimore. No, I don't want to call out particular places or anything like that.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Very good. So here's another question. As parents now with older teenagers, and then pushing the envelope on everything, like staying out very late, past the time we made up, saying I'm not in the mood of going to school, to yeshiva, how as parents, how do we stay internally balanced while our kids are not acting correctly or not following the base standard rules of our home? And here's a part two, somebody sent in. One of my kids, 14-year-old, is basically doing whatever they want, doesn't listen to me anymore. I'm learning how to accept and love him anyways. However, how do I stay calm and collected when he's doing crazy behaviors in front of my eyes? It gets me angry. So basically, how do we stay grounded and not lose it?
Well, there's definitely a nisayon. A child's nisayon is also a parent's nisayon. It's everyone's going through the nisayon, and the parent has to realize that's part of their nisayon that they are going through themselves. And as mentioned previously, the fact that this neshama was put into our family is what is for us a schus to be able to be aimed in that nisayon. So although we get frustrated by it, but realize that this was chosen for us. This was put here in order for us to deal with it. And I think that there are two nakudas. One, which we mentioned before, it's not my job to correct it, and it's not my fault. A lot of times we get frustrated because we blame ourselves for it, and we're mortified by it. We're embarrassed by it. It's embarrassing for us when their children live a certain way. And if a person is able to remove themselves from the equation, so then they have a much easier time being able to embrace it. But the most important thing, I think, is the following thing. Parent has to realize that by being patient and accepting, that is what is going to eventually bring their child back. I know a particular boy who was off the derech, and he's today a Magid Shir in one of the biggest yeshivas in the world. Someone asked his mother, how did that happen? And she said, my son always knew that I was there for him. And when he was ready to come back, he came back. And if we lose it on our kids, so then our kids feel like that there's no place to go back to. And then when they're ready to, when they're done with their journey or whatever, they're ready to pull things together, there's nowhere to go. So we need to constantly be showing them we love them, we care about them. And like I mentioned with Yishmael and Avram was always asking, Yishmael's out of the house. But at the same time, Avram is always there because he's giving him hugs, quote unquote, those hugs that we spoke about. And Yishmael knew my father loves me. And when he was ready to do tshuva, so there was where and what to come back to. We have to know that this is our job. Our job, if our children are struggling, is to show them this unconditional love, which doesn't necessarily mean unconditional approval, but unconditional love, and that's there, and make sure that comes through to their child, and that is what's going to facilitate them getting better. So if we want to be a part of the solution or to help this process. So then we have to realize that's why that's what we can do by not lose it.
Okay, let's get into the next question. A little complicated question. I'm divorced and my kids go back and forth between homes. I feel like whenever limits and guidelines I set for my children get completely undermined and messed up, they get anything they want from the other house. And if I don't pay for something and buy the thing that they need, the other parent will just get it. How do I set up my kids for success and to be healthy as adults as they grow up in this complicated situation?
It is a complicated situation, and I can't say that I know the most about how to deal with that type of situation. But if a person's asking me what my feeling is, you can't. Things change. The moment that there are two homes, we spoke about what we've been speaking about a lot is about what we called a healthy situation, but a divorce where one side is being extremely permissive is not a healthy situation. And under those circumstances, a person trying to make boundaries, or at least boundaries that are firm boundaries, are going to just drive the child to the other side and make it and create animosity. And a parent loses a little bit of their ability to be firm when there's now two homes. And there definitely is still there's still the ability for a child to become great, even if the home is extremely permissive. The only thing a parent that lives that way can do is to be the right type of role model and to encourage the child to make that decision on their own. But to set boundaries, I think is been made practically impossible because of the situation. That's the way that I understand it. And again, we don't take responsibility for the situation Hashem put us in. If this is the way Hashem put this child, this is going to be this child's journey. His journey is going to be to find it himself. People have found it themselves. There's people who grew up in houses that are not from, and they came to Yiddishkeit, and they learned how to set boundaries for themselves or whatever it might be. So if you're in that type of situation, I think that a person has to just try to make their child's experience in the house as pleasurable and enjoyable as possible.
Okay, Moedik, Rabbi or Center. We have a live question. Hold on one second. Okay, you're on.
Hi. So Baruch Hashem, we have a nice family, and we try giving every kid their needs, and we try being in tune to their love language and showing them all the love that they specifically need.
Beautiful.
But we have a son, a 12-year-old, that maybe he was harder for us to figure out his exact love language, but we think we got it. However, as soon as we tell him something he has to do, no matter how small, he will just flip. He'll think we're out there to get him, and he's just gonna, blabber his mouth off and go into his mode. So how can we get him to do the things he has to do, no matter how small they are, if it's homework, cleaning up after himself, in a peaceful way?
Wow. First of all, it sounds like you're a great parent.
We try. I listen to all these podcasts, so.
Okay, you listen to all of them. That's the aside. Now listen to one. You got to listen to all of them. That's great. Yeah. So there's two things. I think that it's extremely important to have a conversation with your child that's not confrontational. In other words, when it's time for the child to do the homework and he doesn't want to do it, that's like not a great time to have a conversation with them, because he's already like all tensed up. If we could find a time when everything is calm and relaxed, and some people say, well, I don't want to rock the boat then, but that's the time when there is to have a conversation and to talk to them about, what would be a good a step in the right direction. Now, when you're dealing with a 12-year-old, I believe that the right thing to do would be to give them an incentive. So if there's something that the child wants, when we give things to our children, we give them, we have a great opportunity to try to get them, to motivate them. So if there's something your child wants in particular that might not be regular for your family, if it's something regular, so then you shouldn't withhold regular from them because you want them to do something. But there's something a little extra that they want, whether it's a nicer pair of sneakers, or it's another pair of sneakers, or it's a trip, or something like that. And when you're not in that moment, if you can get them to embrace that, and very often they will, they're like, I would love to go on a trip. Like my favorite would be for a father-son trip if it's a son, and then you get double out of it. First of all, you get your child to perform what you want, whatever it is. Let's say it's doing homework or whatever it might be, and then you go on a trip and you bond with your kid. And that's what we spoke about, the importance of spending time with them. So while he's gonna have a great time because you're gonna take him to somewhere that he wants to go, whatever it is, and you also get the opportunity for him to feel like you care about him and you're investing time in him and you're understanding him. So it's a win-win situation all around. And I think the answer is to try to find a way to incentivize. Give him an incentive, incentivize him. Give him an incentive that's going to that's going to talk to him, and you have to make sure that if your incentive is a toffee, taffy, or whatever it might be, that's not going to do it. Right? It has to be something that is not expected. I don't think the person always doesn't want to shoot too high because then you doesn't leave yourself room for another incentive, or because in general it's not something that he needs. But try to find something that is not expected, that he would enjoy, and through that get him to do something that would be hard for him to do, but he feels accomplished by doing it.
Very good. I just want to add. Sometimes you can't tell the child to do it right, like now. You tell them like in an hour we're going to do homework. So you give them that space. Another idea is also to give them choices. When do you want to do homework? 12 or 1? So you throw it into his court.
For sure.
And hopefully he decides, and it's his decision.
For sure. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. There was a story about a girl that came to Shlomo Zalman that she wanted to abort a child. So Shlomo Zalman said, look, either I'm going to bring up the child or you're going to bring up the child. You could choose. But we're not aborting the child, we're not going to do.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, that's amazing. You have to be willing to bring up a child to do that. But if you tell the child, when are we going to do the homework, you're kind of like giving them the choice and allowing them to make that choice. And also, like you said, it's brilliant what you're saying. That don't make them do it right now. Give them a little warning. Let them prepare themselves for it emotionally, and then they'll be ready. Excellent advice.
Here's interesting one. Hi, Rabbi. I don't want to blame the school system, but I feel that if only the school would put in a little more understanding and connection to each child's needs, they wouldn't have all these struggles. Is this a fair assumption?
Well, we had our survey in the beginning about how the schools are doing, but there are definitely two different nukudas here. I want to tell you something that happened in a school, in a particular school, and I happen to think that the educational system in Eretz Yisrael in general is phenomenal. This is a story that happened in Eretz Yisrael. Now, there are two different types of yarmulkes. Velvet yarmulke. So we have a velvet yarmulke. There's a velvet yarmulke that has a band around it. I don't know if you can see that. And then there's one. I think what I'm noticing on Coach Menachem is it doesn't look like it has that band on. Am I right?
I don't have the band. No band.
You don't have the band. Okay. Now that band in Eretz Yisrael in Israel is called a seret. It's like a film kind of going around it, right? And seret is also the word for a movie. A seret is a film. So someone came up with the following. Someone in Chinuch came up with the following saying: Misha holech im kippa below seret. Someone who goes with a yarmulke that doesn't have a seret around it, basof yelech leseret belo kippah. They'll end up going to a movie without a yarmulke. If you go with a yarmulke without a seret, so you understand that what they're saying is you're off the derech if you don't have this thing around your yarmulke over here, and you're basically you're on the path to being off the derech. Doesn't sound very understandable. Now, at the same time, I think that it's important for us to realize that different yeshivas have different are catering to different types of talmidim, and there are times when what's appropriate for one type of talmid is not appropriate for another, and therefore the yeshiva that is square is trying to address the needs of one talmid, and another yeshiva is trying to address the needs of a different talmid. I know of in Eretz Yisrael, it's very common that there are people who are they're like the das Torah of different meisters. I know a person, a gadol who's das Torah of two different meisters. One meister, it is absolutely unforgivable for boys to play sports in that meister. Absolutely unforgivable. And there's another meister where they have a basketball court in the school, and he's in charge of both schools. And the reason is because he understands that different yeshivas are meant for different people. The problem sometimes, and not always, is we're pushing our children into the wrong school. There's a boy who belongs in a school that's playing sports. The other school is clearly more chashuv. It's clearly more prominent. I want my kid in that school. So we're going to pull all the protectia we can and make all the phone calls and get our kid into that school. And then our kid is suffering. And then we're saying the school's not being understanding enough. Maybe he didn't belong in that school. And who pushed him there? So I think there's two nakudas. One nakuda is it's important for children to see inspiration in the home. To expect the yeshiva to inspire the talmidim. Yeshivas do better jobs. Some yeshivas that are more inspiring, and other yeshivas that are more, they're more removed. But we can't expect the yeshiva to just do the job for us. The foundation has to come from the home, and that is the foundation of inspiration. And that's number one. Number two is there are schools that they're very clear what their mission is, and if we're going to interfere with the mission because we're trying to send our son to a school where he doesn't belong, so then it's harder to blame the school for that. Now I don't know the way it works in certain places, like in Eretz Yisrael. It's impossible to get your kid into a school without protectia. It's not possible. So using protectia doesn't mean that I'm trying to put my son where he doesn't belong, because it's impossible to get anywhere without protectia. But at the same time, we have to really figure out if we're taking care of our child because this is what's best for them, or this is something that this is our vision for where we want our children to be, and because we feel good about saying my child is in this school or in that school, and then we're creating a situation where they're not getting what they need. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, so the two more questions I want to cover, Ryan.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to the closing segment part, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. Our son, who's finishing up high school, is discussing with him different options for learning, maybe in Eretz Yisrael, but he's expressing he doesn't feel so connected to being so frum. What is our approach, and how should we handle going post high school? If he's not, basically the question is, if he's not so into going further in his studies, he finished high school, he did it, but he's not so into it. What is the job as a parent? Are we supposed to push them to go further? Are we supposed to say, okay, start college, go to work? What's the proper approach in such a situation?
it's become very popular for people to come to Eretz Yisrael after high school. And Eretz Yisrael does offer something that's very special. I was talking to a Rosh Yeshiva in America. He said, I think the difference between Eretz Yisrael, Rosh Yeshiva in America is saying this. I think the difference between Eretz Yisrael and America is as follows. In America, we could get you excited about learning. In Eretz Yisrael, you could get people excited about Yiddishkeit. In America, we don't have that. There's a different aviraz, a different environment.
Sorry, I missed that word. Say that again. I'm sorry. In America, you get them excited about learning. In Eretz Yisrael, you could
get them excited about Yiddishkeit. We don't have that in America. We're one-dimensional. This is a Rosh Yeshiva saying. This is what he was saying, and I hear where he's coming from. He's like, "What do I have to offer you? I have to offer you Torah, 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 Torah." And I don't have an opportunity to get you excited about Yiddishkeit, which, by the way, excited about Yiddishkeit will eventually get you excited about learning. But there's a lot of opportunity in Eretz Yisrael that people don't have in Chutz La'aretz. And what I tell Bacham when they come to Eretz Yisrael is your past performance should in no way dictate your expectation for your future. The rules change in Eretz Yisrael. Everything is different when you get here. So even if there's someone who feels like he's not inspired and he doesn't necessarily, he's not really looking to find a Kodesh Baruch Hu, there's a tremendous chance that, or an opportunity that something is going to happen in Eretz Yisrael, or it can happen also. It technically can happen in America, but I think Eretz Yisrael, we found it's much more masugal for a person who's to find the closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even people that aren't necessarily looking for it. But he has to be in the right yeshiva. He needs to be in the right yeshiva, and there's many different yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. And you have to find the one that's the most suitable for him. What certain parents have told me certain times is, I'm only sending my son to this type of yeshiva. So if you're not open to your child being in the yeshiva that's best for him, so then sending him to Eretz Yisrael can do more damage than it does good. But I do think that we should encourage our children to be receptive to, I heard from Dr. Pelkowitz that until a person is 19, 20 years old, his brain hasn't really developed fully. It physically hasn't developed. Like there's parts of the brain haven't matured, and you can't really make decisions until you're 19, 20. So we really want our children to be able to get an opportunity to choose what they feel is really right for them. And before that age, any choice is not necessarily one that's going to be something that's coming from depth.
Okay, Representative, the last question, then we'll go to closing. We'll give Representative at the end, we give a closing. So but last question before. It's an easy question. We always end off with the easy question. Okay, the question is as follows. How can you say just love them if he's ruining his own life by letting him hang out with the worst friends and doing the worst things? Love him for who he is and not for what he does. Unconditional love. This is impossible for me. The things that he does, the way he speaks to me and my husband, the destruction he's making in my house, the friends he brings home, how as a human person can we deal with it and give him the love that he needs?
Okay, well, again, unconditional love definitely does not mean unconditional approval, and we don't have to approve of what they're doing in any way, or form, or fashion. And the fact that someone is doing something which is detrimental, and if it's going to be helpful, and certain circumstances it will be, you can tell them you don't approve of what their choices and the things that they're doing. If it's healthy, if the child is healthy, very often they're not. Very often they've been traumatized from whatever it was, and it's important for us to realize that this is the way that we're going to give them an opportunity to come back. By loving them is it's showing them that you have what to come back to. A lot of times, because there's that friction, then there is no more. We've lost the opportunity. There's no more. They don't have anything that they even can think of coming back to. For that reason, if a person is worried about the child that's in crisis, we'll lose them forever if we yell at them and we scream at them, and that's not going to bring them back. The only thing that we can do is we can show them love. And again, If a child is capable of hearing that the things that he's doing are not right, unconditional love does not mean unconditional approval. And therefore, we don't need to feel like we can't express to them that there's something that they're doing that we don't like. If the boy, the child, whatever it is healthy enough to hear that. And that's something which we have to have guidance from someone who is a mechanech, someone that knows the child, understands what they're going through. The other thing is we can empower others to be involved in our children. The home should be a place where the child feels accepted. A mechanech can talk to a child. You could get someone else to be involved, whether it's someone, a guidance counselor, whether it's someone that's a Rebbe in the yeshiva or whatever it might be. One of those people can be the ones that are working for you and saying all the things that you perhaps would want to say if they feel like it's going to be niskabel. But as far as the home is concerned, the most important thing is that child should see that a parent loves them. Child will respect the parent for that. And if a child respects and sees a love for Hashem and respects its parent, even when they're going through things that they're having a hard time making right decisions. But when they get the strength, they'll return. I'll tell you, I'll end with one quick story. I asked a boy once who was at risk, very at risk, sitting together with a few girls and a few boys. There was a friend of mine asked me to help with their child. And it was right before Pesach. And I asked these kids, which of the 4 sons do you identify with? It's a survey. You could put it on one of your surveys. Which of the 4 sons? The Tam, the Rasha, the Chacham. The boy that I was the most involved with leaned over to me and said he said to me, I identify with the Rasha, but I really want to be the Chacham. And a lot of times the kids, they don't have the strength to make the right decisions right now. The boy was doing a lot of really very damaging things to himself. But he wants to get back there. And we have to give him a place to come back to. And if he sees his parents are good, they're people they're growing people, they're people that are close to Hashem and they love him, he's going to still want to come back. I want to come back. I'm proud of my father. I love my father. He loves me. I'm going to get there right now. It's so hard. I got so much peer pressure. I have so much, so much temptation. But we have to have patience and the emunah is going to come back. It's Ava and Emunah, right? That's what we said. It's Ava and Emunah. So we have to believe that this child is going to come back.
Okay, beautiful, Representative. Let's go to the closing. Representative, think of a nice something to leave us with, but we'll start wrapping it up now. Okay, yeah. First of all, Rabbi Chaim Zvi for coming on tonight, waking up early morning, giving tremendous chizik and chazik. There was a huge oilam here tonight with thousands of people that will listen to it later. It should definitely make a big rosham. Again, we said the gematria is 123, so I think it worked out perfectly. Again, tonight's show was sponsored by Eli and Chani Eisman of E events with a person of Rosh Hashiva for the dedication, devotion that he gives to each Talmud. They continue to be Marbet Torah with Yeshiva Das. Again, if anybody wants to join, just WhatsApp me at 848-525-0066 and save my number. I will email you every Sunday the flyers. You can go to Coach Menachem. You can go to MenachemBernfeld.com. Sign up for his email list that sends out the shiurim and the replays. Menachem, the show will be available in a few hours. Menachem will stay up late and get it up right 2-3 in the morning usually. Again, if anybody's here the first time, every Sunday night at 9:30 on this Zoom ID, different shiurim, different topics. Menachem next week, December 4th, we have a program. Rabbi Shulam Epstein. He's from Scranton. He's one of the biggest therapists, well-known therapists in the area of OCD and anxiety. Topic is anxiety or piety. Understanding OCD and anxiety in the frum world. So please join. It should be a very powerful program and let people know about it. Again, everything's recorded. Menachem will be on menachembernfeld.com. If anybody has any questions for us or for Rabbi Center, please email us at coachmenachem@gmail.com and we will Menachem respond. And tonight's share is 123. If you want to listen to it on the phone, we'll be up tomorrow on the phone lines at 848-777-GROW. And I want to thank again the advertising sponsors, Lakewood Scoop, Ellie and Ariel from 5 Central, Chayla Kaufman from Shul from JCN. And we're going to go to closing first with Coach Menachem and then Rabbi Center. We'll go. Coach Menachem, wrap up tonight. Wrap up a 2-hour share.
Wrap up. First of all, thank you so much, Rabbi Center, for giving your time early in the morning. And the topic is a challenge. It's not an easy one. And like we heard, each child is different. And the parents, it's not easy, to say the least. But just to remember the foundations, like we discussed, the positivity, the hugs, all of the discipline is afterwards. But it's only after you can give the hugs. And tefillah, like we heard, siyata d'shmaya, doesn't go without it. And Hashem sends each child to that parent. And I think it's very important, like we heard tonight, it starts with the adult, with the parents. Sometimes it's hard. After all these challenges, you don't feel the love for your child. And sometimes it starts with your own, how you deal with your own inner child, how you feel about yourself, how you relate to yourself, self-compassion. What are the voices that you hear? What do you say when you make a mistake? When you yourself make a mistake? So that's, if you can't take it when you make a mistake, how could you give it to your child? And when you make a mistake, nobody knows about it. You try to keep it a secret. But when your child does it, everybody sees. So you get mad. So it starts off with self-compassion, self-love, which is hard for people who haven't seen it, who need it. And those kids need it the most. The parents, the kids, and just a little bit that we do, just a little bit, one step at a time, we'll make a change in Mitzvah Hashem. And like we heard, eventually they'll come back. The person himself, I'll come back, my little child will come back, my real child, my inner child. But you have to be there just with patience. And I know it could be hard. And self-care is important. And for those who didn't get self-love when they were younger, they usually don't understand what self-care is all about. Just to be there for yourself. Just tell yourself you're okay, even if you're not perfect. And if you can be okay, even if you're not perfect, then your child could be okay. You could be there for them. And Mitzvah Hashem, slowly but surely, we should be able to do our tafkids. This is why we're here. This is what Hashem sent us. And we try our best. We should have a lot of siyata d'shmaya, shkoyach.
Coach Menachem, Rabbi Center, two things. First of all, what a bracha from all the hundreds of people that come here to spend their Sunday nights, late at night, to get chizik in Chinuch, which is a journey in itself. We're going to bracha for everybody who's going to hear the shir, heard the shir, who's going to listen to the shir later, then leave us with strong, wrap up 2 hours, divrei chizik.
Wow. Well, first of all, it was a plus for me, even just to hear those closing remarks from Coach Menachem. I really don't want to say anything because I think that was really what we should be left with. But I guess I have to. That's why I'm here, and I'm happy that I was able to be on. The first thing is we mentioned that you have to hear all of these episodes because there are many different mahalchim, and every person has to realize, and they shouldn't feel like they're stuck in one particular thing. And just because something resonates by you, it has to be right for your child. And Rav Moshe Feinstein explains by the Arba Banim, we speak about we just mentioned the Haggadah, the Chacham and the Rasha, and you look, the Chacham and the Rasha, their questions are super similar. So why does one get such a harsh response and the other one gets such a soft response? Says Rav Moshe, you have to know your kid. You have to know who you're talking to. And we spoke about spending time with your children and how important that is. And that every person is different. And there are people who, because of the fact that their experiences, they just need a lot of hugs. But there are also times when a person has the ability to try to stretch their children, to have more expectations, to set boundaries, whether it's when they're younger using incentives, as we mentioned for Bisol Salanter, that he says that when you're younger, you use the Yetzer Hara, or when you're older, and there's a place for a person giving constructive criticism to his son. As Coach Menachem mentioned, son or his child, that criticism doesn't mean that you're bad, especially when it comes couched with so much love, and you're great. I just want you to be better, and I know that you can be better, and I believe in you, and I love you, and it's because I'm so proud of you that I can actually say this. And the Gemara in Talmud says, Kol zman sheteichachos ba'olam, as long as there's criticism, constructive criticism in the world. Nachas ruach ba, toiva ubracha, v'ra misalekes min ha'olam. Teichachos is a super important part of the way that we can improve if it's done properly. Rabbi Chaim Zvi explains that the Avodah Zarah Baal Pa'ar is such a strange Avodah Zarah that people used to just relieve themselves in front of the Avodah Zarah. Says Rabbi Chaim Zvi, the idea of the Avodah Zarah is to do what you want. You could do what you want. Everything is acceptable. You could even just go to the bathroom right here. And that's not Yiddishkeit. And there's an idea of a person being able to have us having expectations of our children, expectations of our Talmidim, again, in a very healthy way. If we do that in a healthy way, that's what it means to be a mechanech. And what we speak about, there's a pasuk that says, this past week's Haftarah, Kisif seikoyin yishmeru das, the Torah of Akshem Ifiu, Ki malach Hashem tzavakaisu. He's a malach. What does it mean your Torah is a malach? So we mentioned, the Medrash says, Ein l'cho kol esav she'ein lo malach oimer alav makeu v'amen lo gadel. A Rebbe's job is to try to stretch his Talmidim, get his Talmud to serve Hashem, to live in the struggle, to embrace the struggle, which is embracing the fact that I'm getting out of my comfort zone. And that's something that a person can enjoy, teach them to have the simcha of growth, simcha to be happy with the fact that they're growing. And that's something when a person does it with the right balance, and a person feels that satisfaction, and realize this is where happiness is, that will help him to be able to overcome all of the temptations of the world, of all the pleasures, because really those pleasures are just running away. It's just running away from life. And real life is a person who's moving, Adam Lamo Yulad, we're on this world to be a hoilech and to continue to grow and to move forward. And I think that the people that are here listening to this clearly are people that are searching to grow, because this is what they're doing on their Sunday night. So you're clearly those types of people. And to believe in our children, believe in, to establish our love for them, and not only to feel it, but to be able to convey it in a way that our children understand. And then to believe in their abilities and to have patience with them. And Be'ez Hashem, we should have nachas, as Coach Menachem said, first from ourselves and then from our children. Because if you don't have nachas from ourselves, we're going to have a hard time being able to appreciate them and their struggles. And we should all be zeichet to continue to move forward and to move up.
Amen.
Thank you.
Rabbi Sender, thank you so much for coming. We'll see everybody on Shem next week, 9:30 of Michelle Epstein. Have a good night.